All right, I have roughly 15 minutes to get this video done, so hopefully it doesn't take that long. But yesterday I posted a Halls of Atonement quote unquote easy route video. It got a lot of really good feedback, so thank you guys so much for the support. A couple of things people asked me in that video that I'm going to try to do in future videos is I want to talk about lust timings, and I also want to talk about certain mobs more in detail, like why we're pulling some mobs versus not, or maybe why we're routing to like the right hand side versus the left side in here is a good example. I see Ara'Kara fall apart so fast in the first pull so often, and I think it's a mistake. What a lot of players try to do is they try to do a really, really big pull at the start of the dungeon. They're trying to grab every single mob. They're trying to run it all the way down to the mini boss to get Lust on CD. Blizzard made a lot of changes going into this season that has made this very difficult to do without coordination, without people using a lot of defensives on the fly, without healing CDs being popped on the move, without Lust being popped. Like, there's so many risks of doing that pull that I just think it's a mistake to do it if you don't need it to time the run. This is actually a pretty lenient timer, I would say. Not the freest key, it's not an eco dome, but I don't think that risk needs to be taken super early on unless you're like a push group who's really tight on their timer, whether you're pushing a 14 or an 18 or a 20. And this also is not meant for those top groups. This is just meant for pugs. So what I like to do in pugs is I grab the crawlers on the stairs, of course, and then I'm going to be grabbing these engorged crawlers on my way down, and I stop once I pull the flyers. So what I'm doing is I'm stopping just about here. The reason for this is because these flyers can now target anyone. So this bleeding jab does a ton of damage. Unless you're playing with a lot of dwarves or like evokers and stuff who can remove bleeds, these mobs suck. You also have these dashes, this ambush, that also does a lot of damage to players. And they change the way that this mob interacts. Instead of Venomous Spit being individually applied as a dot to a player, and so like each instance of Venomous Spit is its own ID essentially on that player. It now stacks, so it refreshes. It's like if you extend bursting like from back in the day, or you kill an extra bomb crab at the very end of the dot in Floodgate. It's problematic. So I like to stop here, and I stop until all of the smaller non-elite mobs die. Because once that happens, everything else is a little bit more tame. You can just walk with the 3 remaining engorged crawlers into the next pull. So it'll end up looking more something like this. And you're going to grab these 3 and you're going to walk them into this caster, who should be located right here. Like, this means you're on a good pace at the start of the dungeon. Now, to make this not look like a jumbled mess, I'm going to change this, of course. But you're going to then kick this mob on its first web bolt, and you're going to run it into the mini boss at the same time while picking up some of these other mobs. And then once you're on the mini boss, the tank, I personally think, should always watch Horrifying Shrill. Now, of course, if you're like a VDH, a prop warrior, a prop paladin, you have access to a couple more interrupts in your arsenal. Most other tanks, or I'm going to assume you're playing like Brewmaster or Guardian Druid, or maybe like a tank without any toolkit, like leave the toolkits out of it. You should just make sure you're kicking Horrifying Shrill, so that allows your DPS and your healer, if they have a kick, to kick web bolts. If you happen to pull the Trilling Attendant, great, or it's not a big deal. If you can leave it out for a little bit, as a pug, in a pug group, I just assume that no one's going to kick, so you want to minimize the amount of casters you have in a pull if you can. So leave it out for a bit. If you can't and it gets pulled in, no big deal. Try to get it in with like anything you have in your kit, or maybe a DK can grip it in or something. Once this platform goes down, the next thing I like to do is I like to grab these crawlers, this caster, these crawlers, and then these flyers will come in as well. If you're the tank and you kick web bolt first, it should follow you, and you'll end up actually tanking like right here. This little 3 is not letting me draw, but you can, once they're on the edge of the arena, you shouldn't have any worry about pulling this patrol, which will be nice. Following that, we're going to grab crawlers. The crawlers down here as well. You also want to make sure you tag these jabbing flyers. This is going to be very important later. And basically, once you finish the first boss, you want to make a note like, oh, I have X amount of count, which I'll point out in a second. You'll also grab these crawlers and these flyers. And then once you feel like the pull is under control, this is totally up to the tank's discretion. Basically, once all of these non-elites die, you can grab these crawlers and drag them onto the mini boss. So we can actually just include this in this pull. For this mini boss, I recommend everyone stand in melee. You'll avoid the web spray, and it'll also make aggro for the Call of the Broodcast extremely easy for the tank. If you are a non-tank player watching this, please stand in melee. There's no reason not to. You can literally AFK behind the mini boss. You'll never have to dodge frontal. You can just kick web bolt whenever it's casting, and then you never have to worry about threat either, because your tank will be able to pick it up. Following this, you can then grab this platform. Now, the option is you can leave these crawlers out for the time being because getting this attendant all the way up is pretty difficult, but you want to clear this platform as well. So at this point, take a note, we are at 38.62%. Now, I didn't really talk about Lust. So Lust can be used in a couple of spots. You can use it on the first pull. Most groups will use it on this first mini boss. You can also use it on second or third mini boss. I think getting Lust on cooldown on any of these mini bosses on cooldown or on someone's cooldown is going to be really beneficial. When you do it exactly, I don't know if it matters. Alternatively, you can also Lust on Avanox. As long as you get Lust on cooldown before the 10-minute mark in the dungeon, you should be able to still get 3 Lusts out of this place since it's a 32-minute timer. So it's really up to you. I don't like the first mini boss, and the third mini boss has like some problems with floor space, especially with these poisonous cloud casts. Once the first boss goes down, it's going to be a pretty standard route. You're going to grab these first 3 drones, or bloodworkers, I should say. You're going to grab the assistants, you're going to grab the web mage, and of course, you're going to want to grab the hulking bloodguard at the end of the bridge. Players in your group should focus the hulking bloodguard because he gives everything else in its proximity a 50% damage reduction. So this guy going down first is very important. And you want to make sure you're just kicking the web mage. Now, the most important cast from this mob is the revolting volley. This has been changed. Back in the day, back in season 1, it used to just be a very small healing absorb, which can get removed pretty much by like a chain heal. But now it's a really, really nasty poison that does a ton of damage. And if you don't have a full way to remove like everyone's poison in the group, GG's. But as long as you're kicking that, you're very chill. After this, I really like the right side route. And the reasoning why I like to go to the right, so coming up this way, is that down here, you have a lot more stag shells. You have like 4 more stag shells, or I guess technically 3 more stag shells to deal with, which can be problematic if you don't have good CC. You also have a lot more web mages to deal with, and you have like forced double web mages that also like coincide with other sets of double web mages. I think web mages and pugs are the bane of my existence. I think I've seen so many groups fall apart because these casts go off. My mentality when it comes to pugging runs is I want to run the route that's not necessarily fastest, but I want to run the route that has the least resistance and the highest success rate, assuming that no one's going to kick and no one's going to CC. And so I think right-hand side is just easier to do. So yes, this pull is going to be a little small, but it is double web mage with a bloodguard, this is probably I would say the scariest pull in the dungeon. Maybe this next pull can be scary if you accidentally body pull too much. So following this, you want to try to pull this assistant, this stag shell, and this web mage when the patrol is walking away. This will give you ample time to make sure the stag shell dies quickly. You can land a few kicks on the web mage to move it back this direction because you don't want this bloodguard coming in because it'll make this mob die extremely slow, and double casters with a hulking bloodguard is very scary. So assuming you can do that successfully, you'll then, ooh, holy shit, I'm just drawing everywhere. You will then pull this patrol with the bloodworkers, and this is kind of same old song and dance what we've seen before. 1 caster, 1 assistant, and 1 bloodguard. Finally, we have the last pull. Obviously, there's nothing to really talk about here. Make sure you're stopping these stag shells from going off. And yeah, kick the mage if you happen to like... It normally sits here channeling on the door, so you can't get past. But if you like displace it with like Ring of Peace, Death Grip, Typhoon, it'll just then start casting. If that's the case, just make sure you're kicking. If not, it's basically just like an AFK mob that you just get free % from. Preceding this, I will say you are just going to pull the Bloodguard pull. This pull's not too terrible. It's just him plus the drone, or like the little Bloodworkers. Once the hulking Bloodguard dies, you can pull the Bloodworkers into boss, which is absolutely fine. If you don't want to do that, you just do the boss by itself. Generally speaking, if you lusted like first mini boss or any of the mini bosses in this area, lust should be coming up somewhere in here. Generally, people will just lust the second boss, which I think is a fine lust. There is a world where you can lust like this area as well, pull 9 and 10. If you want to just get lust on cooldown and you have CDs up, this is also efficient lust. So yeah, those would be the lust timings. And then your final lust will be probably on the last boss. All right, so now we're done with second boss. We're moving into the final area. Now there's 2 ways you could pull this area. I'm going to talk about probably the safer way. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the safer way. So pull this first Overseer. Big thing to watch out for here is the Venom Volley. You need 1 kick. You need 1 person to watch this kick. I guess 1 melee kick, I should say. So tank, generally speaking, this is probably fine for you to watch. You're then going to pull both sides of drones. And if you can, you're also going to try to pull this one here. What's also going to happen is that these winged carriers will eventually, as you can see, their patrol route is going to eventually fly over your head. So this pack's going to naturally just come into the pool. Now, the one thing I will say about this pack is you do need to be careful of these dashing strikes. If not all players are considered in combat with these mobs, they will just dash to whatever player they are in combat with. And this could be the healer and the tank, and that's it, because no DPS maybe have hit them yet. And that means that they might all dash to your healer and essentially one-shotting them. So definitely be careful. As a tank, I like to try to get some form of CC. As a brewmaster, I'll land a leg sweep, just so everyone can actually tag them. And then once that happens, it's a little bit safer. Next, we're going to go down to the left-hand side. We're going to grab these drones, this patrol, and these carriers can be pulled when they're flying kind of around next to the platform pretty easily. Now, I guess there's really two options here. One option is that once this pack goes down, you can actually jump down into... You can just jump down onto this stair and you can pull this center pack. Now, if you do this, you can tell that you're obviously over percent. You would drop this pack here, and at the start of the dungeon, you don't need like these flyers. But I don't really want to like, I'm trying to make this as least complicated as possible. So let's not do that strategy. Let's ignore this pack. I do think the hulking bloodguards are pretty efficient. And then you can also, like, good groups will end up pulling these mobs onto boss. So let's get these blood workers, or sorry, these reinforced drones back in here. And instead, you're going to pull boss after pull 15. And then at the very end of the dungeon, you're actually going to just walk right up these stairs here to the other side. And you're going to grab this pack with these workers here. And right there, that's exactly 100% count. And so this is the route that I generally will run in pugs. I find it to be pretty easy. Assuming that no one's going to kick makes going right-hand side a lot easier than going to the left. And yeah, that is Ara'Kara. So let me know what you guys think down below. Of course, any feedback is good feedback and much appreciated. Let me know what dungeon you guys want to see next as well. I do plan on doing every dungeon, but I can maybe prioritize one over the other if people are struggling with a certain route. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.